In 1979, British Airways made a tiny mistake that cost them $5 billion. They canceled one man's flight. He took it very personally, so personally that he launched his own airline just to compete with them. What followed became one of the most brutal rivalries in business history. The man's name was Richard Branson. Before he became Sir Richard Branson, he was a 29-year-old record label owner, just trying to get to the British Virgin Islands. But when British Airways canceled the last flight of the day, leaving him and dozens of others stranded, Branson made a split-second decision, one that would eventually lead to a $5 billion airline empire. Frustrated but quick thinking, Branson grabbed a small blackboard and scribbled, "Virgin Airlines, $39 one way to BVI." Then he walked through the terminal, calling out, "Who wants to join me? I've chartered a plane." Within minutes, he filled the flight with stranded passengers and covered the $2,000 charter cost. That day, Virgin Airlines was born. While flying on his plane, a light bulb went off in Branson's mind. If I can fill a plane with frustrated British Airways customers this easily, why not start my own airline? It would take 5 more years to make it happen, but he never forgot that feeling of being stranded by a corporate giant that simply didn't care. That spark of frustration became the fuel for Virgin Atlantic. June 22, 1984, a single-leased Boeing 747 took off from London Gatwick to Newark. That flight marked the birth of Virgin Atlantic, built on one aircraft, one route, one bold mission: make flying great again. British Airways executives laughed. To them, Branson's airline was a joke. They had no idea a war had just begun. BA's chairman, Lord King, publicly mocked Branson. He's too old to rock and roll and too young to fly. But Branson saw something BA didn't. Customers were fed up with the soulless corporate experience of most airlines. He knew they wanted something different, something personal. British Airways wasn't just the UK's flag carrier. It was a monopolistic giant with 60% market share of UK flights, strong government ties, massive marketing budget, recently privatized and led by aggressive management. On paper, they should have crushed Virgin without breaking a sweat. But Branson turned his underdog status into a weapon, doing the complete opposite of what British Airways stood for. Free ice cream for passengers, in-flight massages, stand-up bars on planes, fashion-designed uniforms for the crew, flying ladies, beautifully painted planes that turned heads. Virgin Atlantic wasn't just an airline. It was an experience that British Airways couldn't match. As Virgin grew from 1 to 10 aircraft by 1991, British Airways began to feel the heat. That's when they launched what would later be called the Dirty Tricks campaign, one of the most unethical corporate espionage operations in business history. British Airways didn't just compete, they sabotaged Virgin at every turn. Hacked Virgin's systems, called Virgin's customers, falsely claiming flights were canceled, spread rumors to journalists about Virgin's financial troubles, poached passengers at airports with lies about Virgin spied relentlessly, gathering intel to crush Branson's growing empire.
They had teams of people, behind closed doors, illegally accessing our computer information, ringing our passengers, pretending to be from Virgin Atlantic, saying we had flights that were cancelled and switching them onto British Airways. They had people going through my rubbish bins, going through the rubbish bins of our clubs, trying to pick up any kind of dirt on us. They were placing stories in the press and so on and so on.
By 1992, the pressure from BA had taken its toll. Branson was forced to sell his beloved Virgin records just to keep his airline afloat. But instead of giving up, he did something unprecedented. He declared war on British Airways, publicly. In 1992, Branson took the battle to court, suing BA for libel. As the case unfolded, shocking evidence emerged. BA staff admitted to shredding incriminating documents. Whistleblowers came forward, exposing the Dirty Tricks campaign. BA executives refused to testify, further incriminating themselves. The aviation world watched in shock as the corporate giant was slowly unraveled. In 1993, British Airways surrendered. They paid £1 million to Branson personally, £250,000 to Virgin Atlantic, all legal fees. And they also issued a formal public apology. BA's chairman, Lord King, was forced to resign in disgrace. But Branson's most brilliant move came next. Instead of keeping the money, he distributed it to every Virgin Atlantic employee as a BA bonus. The message was clear. They tried to kill us. We're still here. And we're all in this fight together. The David versus Goliath victory created unmeasurable brand value. Virgin bookings surged 30%. Staff loyalty became unbreakable. The media portrayed BA as corporate villains. Virgin's brand reputation soared. The £1 million settlement generated over £100 million in brand value. The war with British Airways was over, but for Richard Branson, it was just the beginning. Virgin Atlantic didn't just survive, it thrived. Over the decades, it expanded routes across the globe, won countless awards for customer service, and became a symbol of daring innovation in an industry known for playing it safe. Branson took the same rebellious spirit that fueled his airline and poured it into building the Virgin Group, a global empire spanning over 400 companies in industries from music and trains to telecoms, space travel, and even healthcare. He launched Virgin Trains, challenging the UK's rail monopolies. He disrupted the mobile industry with Virgin Mobile. And with Virgin Galactic, he set his sights even higher, quite literally, to make commercial spaceflight a reality. Today, Sir Richard Branson isn't just a billionaire. He's a living example that being underestimated can be your greatest advantage. That one canceled flight in 1979 didn't just spark an airline. It ignited a business legacy built on bold moves, customer obsession, and the belief that no giant is too big to take on. From a 29-year-old record label owner stranded in an airport to a knighted entrepreneur flying to the edge of space, Branson proved one timeless truth. Sometimes, the best revenge is building something extraordinary.